To appreciate and enjoy nature. To experience beauty and ride with passion. To be safe, responsible, and help ensure future generations can enjoy the same sport we all do. That's the spirit of boondocking and why we do it. The joy and rush of snowmobiling is something my grandfather passed down to my dad, and my dad passed down to me. It's the same story Jack and Colin have, 3 generations of riders in each of our families. And it's the same story we hear from others we ride with, in whatever backcountry we're in.
Pretty much since I was 1 or 2 years old, I was strapped on the bars in front of my dad, going out in the backcountry, and then by the time I was 7 or 8, he put me on a 440 Jag. And then from there, it was every single weekend, it was me and my dad out in the backcountry together, out riding, and all the way through my teens, and now I'm into my 20s and I'm still riding, still keeping it going, and now it's me trying to get my dad to go out with me. The roles have reversed, but I think he's very happy to see how things are still going. He still has the passion. He's happy to see that I've taken that passion on in my life as well. I think he's extremely proud. It brings him to tears sometimes. He absolutely loves seeing, that I've carried his passion on.
I didn't ever expect my children would love snowmobiling to the degree that they did. Luke just turned 18. Allie just turned 15. They are best friends, and it is exciting for a dad to, you never know how children evolve and where they're going to go and what their interests would be.
My first experience on a snowmobile was when I was like 3 years old, and I sat on my dad's sled pretending I was riding. I really want to thank my dad because he's been pushing me my whole life to be good and follow his footsteps.
I had an awesome experience a couple weeks ago. Boondock Nation invited me up to the Lochsaw Lodge to ride with the Bledsoes, and it was such an awesome experience. Got to take my son out with me and share that passion with my son and some people I hadn't got an opportunity to ride with before.
Luke and Allie were with me. We were able to father, son, daughter, and Rob Kincaid and his son Riley was there, so father, son, go play around in some country that they had never been into, and quite frankly, we went to some country because they dragged us into it that we had never been to, and we know this country pretty well.
Wow, how blessed are we to be out here. This is awesome.
When we went up to the Bledsoes, it wasn't the best weather in the world, but we made it happen, and it was so fun to get my son out there after our hill climb season and shredding the backcountry with him and, share that passion with some other people that I've been wanting to ride with and get out there with the Boondock Nation crew and just go out there and have fun. Sometimes it's not about the cool shots and the big jumps and stuff. It's more about just getting out there and having fun with your kids and your family and getting to see things that other people don't get to see. We found a pile of rocks that day and got up on top of this mountain, and it was just like we were in heaven. We were looking there and we're looking 360 degrees and there's not one thing that we see. No trailers, no dairies, nothing. It's surreal. Cell phones don't work, and if you can't take that in that experience, that's what we're passionate about.
Besides the family bonding, there's the tie with nature. It's something we respect, something we don't take for granted.
Our land has come to a point where it's starting to get jeopardized as far as closing areas, being turned to wilderness and Forest Service management. So at this point, we're starting to learn to work with, skiers and snowmobilers, mountain bike riders and dirt bike riders, horseback riders, hunters and outfitters.
We'll hear more on that from Luke and Allie's dad, Scott, when Boondock Nation returns. Team Lochsaw, located along Lolo Pass on the Lochsaw River, was created to train hill climb racers by connecting pro riders with upcoming athletes. Jack and myself had a great opportunity to head there and ride with Scott, Luke, and Allie, along with Rob and Riley Kincaid. Scott Bledsoe is passionate about the sport of snowmobiling. So are the other board members of the organization.
What we're trying to do is entertain and educate the youth with the surrounding areas, not only Team Lochsaw or Lochsaw Drainage itself, but life in general. We want to bring different users together and educate them on what they have if they don't know what the opportunities are, and kind of coexist, if you will, in the the demographic that we live in. We sit down and we go through and we talk about what inspires people to do what they like to do out there. And when you sit and you talk to people and they start to inform you on what their heart desires, you tend to start to have this group of people that maybe he likes to ride dirt bikes, maybe he likes to snowmobile, but you all have this interest of being able to use these lands and the value you get out of it.
Yeah, it's very important to us to groom in riders. It's probably, for our board of directors, one of the most important things that we do, and especially women and youth. We believe that, one, the technology is phenomenal, so there's some great riding possibilities that wasn't around when we were younger. Two, not only the technology is great, but the opportunity to go see some beautiful country that a lot of folks, even myself, back when I first rode, we were not able to get to these areas. So there's some beauty in the woods that we believe is only seen via taking a vehicle like a snowmobile.
You know, I've got 5 kids, and I want them to be able to enjoy exactly what I have and more. And for them, you know, there's nothing better than to watch your kid, you know, climb a hill, get to the top, you run up there, and you know, you just look around and you're like, holy smokes, you know, this world's big.
Riding in the West, you're getting to see creeks and rivers and beautiful peaks. It's an interesting thing. A lot of folks think that riding like that, where we do ride, we're up in animal life. You're actually up at 15 to 20 feet of snow. You don't see an animal, which would, you know, we'd love to see animals, but in a way it's wonderful. We don't disturb anything like that when we're up at that high elevation. It's turned into, though, it's not just the beauty, it's not just the opportunity, but there's also a requirement of understanding safety, because we're also pushing the envelope to go into some areas that you know, could be dangerous. So, you know, our children are getting to see, have a wonderful opportunity that many people have not been exposed to, but they're able to bring their friends in and see this, and then on top of that, learn a lot of things, including what it takes to survive in the woods, and how to help other people, and how to be a steward of the land.
The user groups there's a lot of them. You have guys that like to fly aircraft in the backcountry, people that ride mountain bikes, hikers, horseback riders, snowmobilers, single track, whitewater rafters, kayakers. A lot of people out there, a lot of folks that like to enjoy what's there.
In the West, we were not able to ride without being stuck all the time, the kind of mountain riding that we used to do. In fact, we were oftentimes limited to trails, which skiers and you know, snowshoers might be on the same trail. That was never fun, because there can be a conflict. But that's all we had. Now, where the technology is today, we're able to leave the trails. We're able to go places that we never gone before. We don't bother animals, and we don't bother skiers and snowshoers. Where we're at the moment is a blossoming sport, a blossoming opportunity. Even the skiers and the sledders are bonding together to accomplish the same thing.
There's a great passion for this sport known as boondocking, and those that live and breathe it love to share about it. More great snowmobile stories from some legends when we come back.
Interesting point about snowmobiling is there's a term that is well used everywhere, and that's boondocking. And if you ask anybody where does that word come from, they don't know. I can pretty much tell you it's Western jargon. When I was riding in the 80s, and the manufacturers would come in and say, what's your riding style? I'd say, well, I'm a boondocker. He said, boondocker? What's a boondocker? I said, I go out in the boondocks. I see a mountain over there, and that's where I go. And how I get there is the enjoyment, you know, whether I go through creeks or creek beds, have to climb hills, hold side hills, work my way through trees. We just boondock. We don't conform ourselves to the trails where everybody else is riding. we just ride.
Well, when I started the company, I lived in an area that had a lot of snowmobiling going on. So a lot of my friends and acquaintances were snowmobilers, and as I came to know them, I wanted to do what they were doing. And so the first winter I was here, they just took me on some rides. So the next year I bought a snowmobile, and I liked it so much that I said, hey, I'm in the magazine publishing business. I don't know of a snowmobile magazine for the West. I'm gonna do it. So we did.
I would always write about, I'm going out, you know, in my boondocking, I'm out boondocking, I'm doing this and doing that. And people would say, boondocking? You know, and it started catching on. Then you had boondockers, Boondock Nation. People who understood, finally grasped what we meant about boondocking, getting out where people don't go, picking your own line, your own path, your own course, and just riding.
I look back at Snow West magazine and my dad and Steve Janes and Lane, the guys who really established the magazine to what it is now. I mean, we're 47 years later. There's been a lot of history. You know, there wasn't a mountain segment when the magazine started. And now the top 4 selling snowmobiles in the industry are mountain sleds. You know, just to be a part of that transition to where mountain sleds were just kind of a sideshow. You know, let's take a long track trail sled and we'll just give that to you guys and call it a mountain sled, to now we're engineering and developing mountain sleds before we're putting that technology to the trail sleds. I mean, it's been a complete 180.
In 2009, we decided that we would like to get into the snowmobiling industry with a trailer, something that would work well for people who had snowmobiles. We knew what the issues were with the trailers. I owned an enclosed trailer from another manufacturer. At the time, we were not producing them, and I felt like me and my team could do a better job and create something that was better. The snowmobile segment is definitely the fastest growing. We started out just doing a few units, and now we're doing several hundred a season. And so that's been really exciting to see it grow.
What's happened right now, in our opinion, the entire opportunity of snowmobiling across our nation is exploding with a different opportunity, a different experience.
There's a lot that can be done. There's a big impact we can have on the sport. The magazine can be a representative of the sport, can be a voice of the people, both as far as the snowmobile product goes, but also as far as the area we have to recreate on goes.
When you're moving from the east across the Midwest, a lot of your riding areas were in private lands. Most of the West is public lands. And so you're seeing some development, but you're not seeing the development like you could in private lands. Right now, some of our favorite riding areas are still in the crosshairs of, let's create a wilderness boundary there so we can protect the land. And those of us out west who use the land are saying, protect it from what? You know, we're pretty good. We take pretty good care of our land because we ride there for the beauty, the enjoyment, the serenity.
The future is in our hands, and we don't want this sport to go away. It takes a nation to keep it going. Stick with us.
Well, first of all, I didn't have the opportunity to ride a snowmobile when I was young. I lived on a rock island with 200 inches of rain a year and a median temperature of 55 degrees, so there was no snowmobiling. But in 1992, I moved to Boise from Lewiston and went to work for jet boating and snowmobiling at that time, just those 2 recreational sports. And I started snowmobiling, and I will tell you, I love the sport.
You know, it's funny, my mom and dad actually met snowmobiling. So it was a natural ground for me to be brought up, right? But they always tell stories about when I was younger. They couldn't get me to sleep, I was wound up, and if they left on the sled or at the cabin or whatever that looked like, you know, I'd throw a fit. So they'd take me for a ride around the cabin and I'd fall asleep. And then when we got back to the cabin, they were gonna dump me off the sled and I'd wake up, you know, and say, I ready. So it's a saying in our family that from the time I could start talking, snowmobiling has been part of my blood.
So when I was about 14 years old, my father, when I got home from school that day, he'd come back with 2 Snowjet snowmobiles. Both of them fit in the back of a pickup. And that's how I got introduced to snowmobiling. And and really, really enjoyed the sport right from the get-go. Love the freedom of it, love to be able to go wherever you wanted to go, basically.
There's no way in the world you'd get to the backcountry and see the beauty of the land in the winter if it weren't for a snowmobile. In Idaho, 61.2% of our lands are managed by the federal government. They're managed by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. based on laws passed by Washington, D.C. legislators. And most of those people have no idea what it's like to live in a state that's dominated with public land. It is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because there are thousands and millions of acres of the most beautiful country in the world that are open for the public to use. We have mountains and rivers and streams and deserts and prairies. It's spectacular country. And yet the federal government passed some laws in the 70s, well-intentioned, I'm sure, but they have made it almost impossible for the public to have access to the public lands. And that's a tragedy.
When you start to realize what's actually taking place, taking the time to serve on the organization, be around people such as Sandra, it's terrifying.
We've just recently completed economic impact studies on boating, OHV, and snowmobiling. Snowmobiling alone contributes $175.9 million a year into the economy of Idaho. The Idaho State Snowmobile Association was actually formed in 1972, so it's one of the oldest existing recreational organizations in Idaho. And ISSA has one charge, one mission, and that's to protect access. Because you can have the greatest sled and the greatest clothes, but if you have no place to ride, what good is it? What we do is we work with both the Idaho legislature and with Congress. I lobby in both of those, plus I work with national organizations, other recreational organizations to make a united voice so that we have some influence and power in Congress.
It's very simple. I've got a lot of friends, people I know that snowmobile. They adamantly want to keep these lands open for snowmobiling, but they are unwilling to spend $25 to be a member of their state club. And those are the organizations that have a voice. And the more people you have involved with that, the bigger voice you have.
Sign up, talk about it, pay your dues, because I know exactly where those funds are going and who's in charge of that. And I can tell you that the progress we've made to just maintain our current riding areas is huge. And the fact that we may have opportunities to reopen or repurpose lands that are out there is somewhat limited, but it is possible. So the way we have to think about it right now is that if we don't do anything now and plan for the future, we will never have the same amount of riding or freedom that we have today.
What we're doing is the right thing to do, and it's good for the economy, it's good for the community, it's good for the way we live, and it doesn't damage the land.
There's nothing more human and instinctual than being outside and enjoying that. And if we don't start to bridge that gap and understand that everybody has their own personal preferences and respect them for that, we're gonna be in a boatload of trouble. So let's see progress. Let's establish some measurements that we can obtain and goals and dreams that we can all communicate on. And let's start to communicate that way so that we can see the progress is being made. What we enjoy today can go away, and I might not ever be able to enjoy that with my parents and my kids at the same time, is why I'm involved right now.
It takes all of us working together to lay the path for a brighter future. That includes those who have ridden for years and those of us heading into the future. What do we all have in common? Passion. That's Boondock Nation, a grassroots movement that's created a culture. For some, it's part of a lifestyle. For others, it's an entire way of life. For all, it's one nation under God.